Snowed In. A Chestnut Creek Holiday Romance. Written by Susanne Ash. Chapter 1. Ella. The Caldwell family comes down the stairs, bags in hand. I stand up and put on my most confident smile. "Everything all right with your rooms?" Mrs. Caldwell returns my smile. "They are lovely. This entire place is so festive. I wish. We've decided to leave before the storm hits. With 2 young kids, we can't risk getting snowed in at a place like this," her husband says, stepping up to the reception desk. "Of course. I don't think it's going to be all that bad, but I certainly understand your concern." I do my best to keep my disappointment off my face. These aren't the first guests who've decided to leave before the weather moves in. "I assume we won't be charged for the remainder of our reservation," Mr. Caldwell says. "Of course not. I'll have you checking out as of this morning." I tap a few keys on the computer before printing a receipt. "I hope you'll visit us again in the future." "We will," Mrs. Caldwell assures me. "This is such a beautiful place." I follow her gaze as she takes one last look around the lobby. The fire is crackling in the large stone fireplace. The plush leather armchairs that used to be my father-in-law's pride and joy are empty today, and the small library shelf is stocked with a variety of books and board games that the Caldwell family enjoyed during their stay with us. "Have a safe trip home," I call as they walk out the double doors that lead to the wide front porch. "2 more cancellations," Margaret says when she walks in from the back office, shaking her head. My mother-in-law looks worried. "Who is left?" I ask, running my fingers through the guest register. "The Sullivans in the Cedar Suite and Mr. and Mrs. Foster in the Hawthorne room," Margaret says without skipping a beat. "The Sullivans left right after breakfast." I make a note to clean their room and get it ready for guests who at this rate aren't likely to arrive anytime soon. I can't believe they are making such a big deal about this in the news. Margaret shakes her head. "We get one of these late November snows every year the week after Thanksgiving. It'll snow for a couple of hours and then everyone will get back to decorating for Christmas. Let's hope you're right. We can't afford an entire week without guests this time of the year." I try not to think of the sad state of our bank account. These past 2 years have been hard on both of us and the Cedarwood Inn. It'll pick back up. We just need to hang in there. Margaret pats my arm and grabs a bucket of cleaning supplies. "I'll get started on the rooms from today's departures." I look up when the door opens, expecting to see the Caldwells. Instead, a tall man in his late 30s with short dark hair walks in. I notice the worn leather boots and the camera bag slung across his shoulder. He's dressed in jeans and a brown leather jacket, carrying a duffel bag that looks like it's seen better days. He brushes his hand across his hair, sending a few half-thawed snowflakes flying as he looks around the room. "Can I help you?" I ask. "I hope so." He smiles, revealing a dimple in his right cheek, almost covered by a 5 o'clock shadow. "You don't happen to have a room for a weary traveler?" As a matter of fact, we do. I smile, deciding that the oak room with its balcony overlooking the creek that runs through the property would be the perfect fit for him. "Does a king-sized bed work?" "Anything with a warm bed sounds perfect right about now," he says. "I'm Luke Harrison." He holds out his hand, and I shake it. I'm halfway through the registration when Mr. Foster comes jogging down the stairs. "What can I do for you today?" I ask with a smile. "We've decided to cut our trip short and try to get the last flight out of here," the gray-haired man says. "We can't risk getting snowed in. Not with my wife's health concerns." "Of course. You'll be leaving today?" I ask, pulling up the reservation. The elderly couple were scheduled to stay through Christmas, with more family joining them in the days to come. "Within the hour," he says, his voice serious. He looks at our latest guest. "If you're smart, you'll get out before they close the roads. There's a blizzard coming." I look at Mr. Harrison, afraid the dire warning will change his mind. "I think I'll take my chances," he says, trading his registrations for the keys to the oak room. Besides, who doesn't love a bit of snow? I smile at the man's words. And we love having you, Mr. Harrison. Your room is up those stairs and to the right. The dimple returns with a grin. Please, call me Luke. Mr. Harrison is my father. I'm Ella, I say. Welcome to the Cedarwood Inn, Luke. Everything okay with your room? I ask when Luke returns a little while later. His hair is darker, damp with water from the shower he must have taken. He changed into a charcoal gray sweater that brings out his strikingly blue eyes. It's perfect. Love the view, he says. Heading out to explore the rest of the town? I ask, reaching for a map of Chestnut Creek. Grabbing my gear. I'm a photographer, Luke says. A photographer not scared away by the blizzard of the century? My tone is light, but behind my back, I keep my fingers crossed that he stays. He is our last paying guest, after all. A bright smile lights up his face. Hardly. I'm a bit of an adventurous soul and this place would look stunning, covered in a couple of feet of snow. He's quite the looker, Margaret says as I watch the front door shut behind him. He's a guest. I pull out my phone to get the latest weather update. There might be something to this snowstorm after all. They're dismissing school early. Margaret waves me off. It's a lot of fuss over nothing. We'll get a bit of snow and that'll be that. Folks are too soft on children these days. Michael used to walk to school no matter what the weather was like. I smile at the mention of my late husband. I know. Through 2 feet of snow, uphill both ways. Margaret laughs. You should have heard his father. I think I'll check on our emergency supplies and then head into town to stock up on a few things in case we lose power or can't get out for a couple of days. I grab a notepad and pen. It can't hurt. Would you mind stopping by the florist? I ordered a small wreath. It should be ready. With Christmas coming up, tears pool in the older woman's eyes. I don't have to ask. The wreath is for the site of the accident that made both of us widows overnight. Do you want me to put it out by the crosses, or do you want me to bring it back here? Go ahead and place it, if you don't mind, honey, Margaret says, wrapping her indigo blue cardigan tighter around herself. I'll visit another day. I nod and get to work. By the time I step out the door and onto the stone path that leads from the front porch to the parking area beside the inn, snow falls in heavy flakes that stick to my coat.
Chapter 2. Luke. It takes me a moment to realize where I'm at. Soft light filters through heavy curtains. I roll over, surprised by the large bed. So different from the cot I'd slept in while photographing the beauty of the Grand Canyon at the start of winter. I sit up and remember that I'm no longer in Nevada. A whim had brought me to Chestnut Creek, North Carolina, a picturesque small town deep in the Smoky Mountains. I throw off the plush covers and pull back the curtains. A winter wonderland spreads out in front of me. A thick layer of snow covers the trees and the walled garden. Only the creek isn't covered, providing a nice bit of contrast to the snow still coming down like there's no tomorrow. I'm itching to head out and capture the landscape in all its icy beauty. I throw on some clothes and walk downstairs in search of hot coffee. Good morning. A small woman in her early 70s with short silver hair that frames her delicate face stands by the fire roaring in the lobby. Did you sleep well? Like a bear. Better than I've slept in months. Can I offer you some breakfast? She asks, pointing to a door that leads to a dining room. Coffee would be wonderful. We can do that. She motions for me to follow her. Sit anywhere you like and I'll get it right out to you. Any preferences? As long as it's strong and hot, I'm good. I stroll through the room that overlooks the same garden and creek I can see from my room. Tall windows let in a lot of natural light, and I'm sure the sunsets will be stunning from this vantage point. Once the snow lets up. We've had 3 more cancellations. The voice comes from what I assume is the kitchen. If this keeps up through the better part of December. Sure. The guest from the oak room is waiting for coffee. Cups clink and a kettle sings. I choose a seat and sit down, turning my back to the cracked door that leads to where the voices are coming from. Pulling my phone from my pocket, I check the latest weather report. I'll take it out. The voice is Ella's, not the older woman who greeted me this morning. Beautiful morning, I say when she approaches, carrying a tray that holds not one, but 2 cups of coffee. Interesting. It is. We ended up with a little more snow than I expected. She puts a cup in front of me, along with a small pitcher of cream and a dish of sugar. I hope you don't regret choosing to stay. Not at all. How could I, with subject matters like this? I point out the window. Right. You're a photographer. She turns to walk off. Would you like to join me? I ask. Excuse me? Ella turns back. I point to her coffee. Would you like to join me while you drink your coffee? I wouldn't mind the company. But if you have work to get back to, I can stay for a few minutes. She studies me carefully and I can't shake the feeling that this is the first time a guest asked her to join them. I was hoping I could pick your brain for a minute about the town. I plan on heading out with my camera as soon as the snow lets up. She pulls out a chair and takes a seat. If it ever does. There's concern in her voice. You're worried about this? I ask. We'll be fine. Worst case scenario, we lose power for a while, she says, small lines appearing on her forehead. I have the urge to smooth them away. Don't worry, we're fully prepared to handle it. It won't be more than a minor inconvenience. I'm not worried. I'm used to living rough and spend plenty of time off the grid. I'll make sure my phone and my batteries are fully charged. I smile and taste the coffee, which is excellent. We have a small generator and some power banks at the ready, Ella says. I laugh. The last time I stayed at a hotel during a power outage, a handful of candles and some peanut butter crackers were the best they could do. It was more of a cabin than a hotel, to be honest though. Ella smiles, her face relaxing ever so slightly. Happy to report that we can provide you with those as well. I'm guessing you've had a lot of cancellations because of the storm, I say, taking another sip. This is excellent coffee, by the way. Pour over? She nods. What gave it away? The coffee? Or the lack of guests here and in the hallways? I ask, giving her a chance to move this conversation away from the financial struggles she seems to be facing. Both. The smile stays on her face. It can't be easy running a small business like this. Family owned? I ask. She nods. I'm running the Cedarwood Inn with my mother-in-law. And this is wiping out your bookings for the week. I imagine that it can't be easy. In a place like this without much staff, the operating costs probably stayed the same. Something like that. But enough about me. What kind of pictures are you thinking of taking? She asks. I look at her and inspiration strikes. I hope this isn't too forward, but what if I took a few pictures of the inn? To freshen up your website and post on social media. She shakes her head. I couldn't accept that. It would be my pleasure. I can't venture too far in this weather and I'll be taking pictures, anyway. Why not put them to good use? It's a kind offer, but I'm not sure we could afford you. Ella picks up her coffee and gets on her feet. There's no charge. Think of it as a thank you for taking me in. I would have been stranded out in the snow or in an airport somewhere if you hadn't offered to rent me a room. Ella shakes her head. You're my only paying customer. Exactly. Without me here, you and your mother-in-law could take a couple of days off. If I had to guess, I'd say that's not something that happens very often. Let me repay you by taking some pictures, I say. You'd be doing me a favor. I don't do well without a purpose. She stands there holding on to her cup with both hands before she nods. I'll find a way to compensate you. Great. I'll grab my camera as soon as I'm done with this. We can start with some indoor shots until the snow lets up. Ready to do this? I ask, throwing my hat and jacket across a leather chair in the lobby. If you're sure you're up for this. Ella smiles at me, looking impressed by my gear. I thought we'd start with a few shots in the dining room and then move in here. I think the guest rooms will look best with plenty of sunshine streaming in the windows. Let's save those until the clouds move out. I pick up my tripod and head to the dining room that's empty and spotless. It's the perfect time to shoot this gorgeous place. Ella quietly follows me. Tell me about the history of the inn. Has it always been in your family? I ask, moving around to find the best angle. My husband's family, and yes, it has. The main part of the building dates all the way back to the early 1900s. Ella walks over, careful to stay out of the shot. It was originally a family home, back when Chestnut Creek was nothing more than a cluster of houses and a general store. When did it become a hotel? I ask. In the late 20s, right before the Great Depression, Ella says. I have some old pictures I can show you if you're interested. Old photographs? I ask. I'd love to see them. My husband's grandfather expanded it quite a bit in the 50s. I guess you could say the inn grew right along with the town. I'm sure it did, I mutter, my focus on framing the shot. We had plans to expand it further, until Ella's voice trails off and something changes in the tone of her voice. Do you mind if I ask what happened? I turn to look at her, standing behind me, arms wrapped around her torso like she's freezing. My husband and his father got into an accident on the curvy road that takes you out of town. Neither of them made it. Her voice is soft and almost void of emotion. I'm sorry. It had to be quite the blow for the two women. It's been 2 years, she says. I'll go build up the fire in the lobby. I assume it would make for a better picture if it's roaring. That would be great. I take more pictures than needed, giving Ella time to compose herself before following her into the lobby. I hope it's not too much, she says, the smile making a return. It's a little sad, but far better than the mask she'd put on before fleeing the room. I chat about my latest travel adventures, telling her about the trip to the Grand Canyon, filming a manatee in Central Florida, and sharing my plans to go cave diving in the Bahamas once it warms up a bit. You live quite the adventurous life, Ella says. By design. I'm sure you have stories to tell about running the inn. I take a few more shots in the lobby. Ella laughs. I do, but it's nothing like the ones you have. I'd love to hear a couple of them if you don't mind sharing. I look out the window where the snow intensifies. We might have to wait to take the outdoor shots tomorrow. In that case, how about I fix us some lunch? I nod and join both women for homemade beef and vegetable soup that's almost as good as my mom's and sandwiches made with crusty sourdough bread. Margaret, Ella's mother-in-law, beams when I compliment the food. I wouldn't mind heading outside for a bit. Maybe scope out the area around the inn and get an idea for the best outdoor shots, I say, finishing a second helping of the soup. The snow's too thick for my big lens, but I might get a couple of mood shots. Margaret looks at me like she has no idea what I'm talking about. Go right ahead. I'll have some hot chocolate waiting for you when you get back, Ella promises. I'm surprised to see her standing on the porch a little while later, wrapped in a thick winter coat and wearing boots that look like they would do a decent job in the snow. Come on over, there's ice forming on the waterfall in the creek. I wave her over and crouch back down to take a few more shots. It's beautiful. She stands next to me, waiting patiently while I finish taking pictures and a short video of the icy creek. I think a couple of shots from this angle will do well. The weather should clear by morning and the early sun will hit the roofline just right. I can practically see it glisten in the light that's lacking at the moment. We walk around the property, talking about its history and the unique architectural features, like the locally sourced cedar that gives the building its name. We should head back, I say when the snow intensifies, coming down heavier than I thought possible. For the first time, I'm wondering if we might actually be in trouble. Not that being snowed in with the beautiful woman next to me would be the worst thing. At least for a little while. You're right. And I believe I promised you some hot chocolate. Ella grins and runs off, determined to beat me inside.
Chapter 3. Ella. I stand by the large windows in the dining room, enjoying my second cup of coffee and the view. What is he doing out there? Margaret asks. Taking photos of the inn for the website. I watch him carefully make his way around the perimeter of the property, snapping pictures at all sorts of angles. We both gasp when he jumps across the creek, coming to a sliding halt on the other side. He better not get hurt. I'm not sure insurance would cover this kind of tomfoolery. Margaret walks off. I continue to watch until Luke is out of sight, enjoying seeing the artist in action. Before heading outside, Luke showed me the pictures from yesterday. I'm not sure how he'd done it, but he'd made the inn look even better than it did in person. They'll be a great improvement from what's currently on the website. I hope it will be enough. We can't afford to take on another loan, and I'd hate it if the inn closed under my watch. Even if there wasn't another Jameson to take over. I sigh and walk into the office, resigning myself to spending a good chunk of the day taking care of the bookkeeping. How is it looking? Margaret asks, peering over my shoulder. Not great. Without a good turnout before Christmas, it'll be a struggle at the first of the year. I rub my temples. I have a little money set aside, Margaret says. It isn't much. Not an option. Thomas wanted you to be able to retire. We're going to honor his wishes. He'd want us to keep the inn open. Luke promised to help me upload a few pictures this afternoon. Let's see if that drums up some business. I give Margaret the most encouraging smile I can muster. It's exactly what Luke and I do after he returns from his venture outside. I didn't realize how much work it takes to edit these. I point at the screen of his laptop that's running some software I can't begin to understand. I usually snap the picture and call it good. You have an eye for photography, Luke says, and I appreciate that he doesn't make fun of my cell phone pictures. That doesn't mean I believe the man. Hardly. I'm serious. You're doing a good job with your social media accounts. With a better camera and a few simple edits, you can do something that's pretty close to this. He pulls up a series of pictures of the snow-covered inn he took this morning. They are stunning. I shake my head. Not really. Your photos, on the other hand. How about this? Let's put them up and see if it makes a difference, Luke says. It better, I mutter under my breath. That bad, he asks, his eyes reflecting nothing but kindness. Not yet, but not good either. I shrug. I can't control the weather any more than I can the potential guests of the inn. What would have to happen to get you out of this hole? Luke asks. I feel guilty about putting this on someone who's staying with us. Don't worry. I'll figure something out. Luke puts a hand on my arm. The touch is comforting and unnerving at the same time. Not in a bad way, but in a way I didn't expect to feel again. I'm here to help. I want to help. What do you need? I take a breath and calm my heart, doing my best to ignore the feel of his warm fingers on my arm, only the thin fabric of my cashmere sweater between us. If we could book most of the rooms through New Year's Eve, we should do all right. It always slows down in January and February, but by March, the tourists come back. And you have what? 6, 7 guest rooms? Luke asks. 8. Half of them suites, I say. It's proven to be a good mix for us, and any other year we've been booked solid from Thanksgiving on. Luke rubs his hands together. Let's see what we can do. I miss his touch the moment his hand leaves my arm. What do you have in mind? You'll see. He grins, his dimple becoming more prominent. What I see is a master at work. By the time we've finished 2 cups of coffee, he's revamped the Cedarwood Inn's website with fresh pictures that even Margaret admits are a big improvement from what we've had before. After a light lunch, we get to work on social media, working together to come up with fun and engaging copy to go along with more of Luke's beautiful pictures. You two sound like you're enjoying yourselves, Margaret says when she joins us. I think part of it is we're so tired that we're getting a bit silly. I grin like a fool. I can't remember the last time I've laughed as much as I have today. We're getting good engagement though, so maybe it's working. Luke picks up my phone and scrolls through the picture-heavy social media app we've been focusing much of our attention on for the past hour. Let's hope so. I try hard not to get my hopes up. As if on cue, the lights flicker and we lose power. I can't believe how many bookings we've gotten since yesterday afternoon, I say to Margaret over breakfast. By the time the power was restored in time for dinner last night, we'd had several requests and the phone keeps ringing today. If this continues, we'll be booked by the end of the day. My mother-in-law helps herself to more scrambled eggs and grabs another piece of toast. No kidding. My phone beeps when another social media notification comes in, along with a message inquiring about our availability in mid-December. You two look chipper, Luke says when he walks in and joins us. It couldn't have anything to do with those social media posts? I type up a quick reply before turning my attention to the man responsible for this small miracle. I took a peek at the comments before I came down, Luke says in response to Margaret's inquiring look. Thank you. Tears pool in my mother-in-law's eyes. You didn't have to do any of this. Luke smiles so sweetly that it melts my heart. It's been my pleasure. Truly. This is a reason to celebrate, Margaret says. How about cocktails in the lobby by the fire at sunset? Sounds good to me. Luke serves himself breakfast, looking pleased. I pour myself another coffee and head to the front desk where the phone is ringing. The rest of the day flies by. Luke spends a good part of the day wandering through Chestnut Creek and the rest of it editing pictures in his room. I look up when he emerges in the afternoon, the sun low in the sky already. How did the photographs turn out? I ask. His face lights up. Better than I hoped. I'll show you when I'm done. I didn't realize it took that long. I process yet another online reservation. You have no idea how many pictures I took. Luke leans against the reception desk, looking at me with those beautiful eyes of his. I could lose myself in them. I sure don't. Take a guess. I aim high. 200. Add a 0. I raise an eyebrow. Seriously? Give or take a couple hundred. No wonder you're not done processing them. I can't wrap my head around anyone taking that many pictures in our small town, covered in snow or not. I took close to 1,000 of the inn yesterday, Luke says, boggling my mind. Why? That's what it takes to get the perfect shots. It's a numbers game, Luke says. I don't believe a word of it. I'm sure I could take 10 times as many snapshots and not get anything like the masterpieces that now grace our website. Who's ready for a cocktail and some nibbles? Margaret asks, walking out with a tray of drinks and several snacks. Don't mind if I do. Luke takes it from her before turning back to me. Ready? As ready as I'll ever be. I shut my laptop and grab my phone. I can field reservation requests from the fireplace as easily as I can behind the desk. I think we should drink to the blizzard that is turning out to be a blessing in disguise, Margaret says, raising her glass. To blessings and new opportunities. Luke holds up his own and I join them. Any new opportunity in particular? I ask. Luke looks at me and hesitates for a moment. It's nothing concrete, but I may have a chance to take pictures and film in Finland. And this is something that's important to you. I may not know him well, but it's easy to hear it in his voice. I don't want to jinx it, but if it happens, it would be the opportunity of a lifetime, Luke says. I hope it works out. I grab his hand and squeeze it. It's the least this man deserves after everything he's done for Margaret and me these past few days. Would you like to step out onto the front porch for a minute? Luke asks a little while later. The snacks are gone and Margaret is in the kitchen cooking something for supper. I could use some fresh air. I smile. After all that time you spent in town earlier? Absolutely. I've been holed up in my room for hours staring at a computer screen. Luke holds out my coat and I shrug into it. I'm not used to being cooped up this much. I'm sorry. I didn't realize how hard the fact that we were snowed in was on him. I doubt the roads will be cleared before tomorrow. It's a nice change of pace. Luke leans against the railing and looks out over the town. It's beautiful, all covered in a thick layer of snow that reflects the last few rays of the setting sun. What are your days like when you're out traveling and shooting? I ask, curious to learn more about this man who wandered into my inn and my life in more ways than one. It's a lot of long days walking around with my camera, crouching down in the dirt, mud, and snow, Luke says. And nights spent editing by the light of a lantern in a tent, if I'm lucky, or a crappy motel if I'm not. He turns around and looks at the building behind us. I'm surprised you chose this place, I say. Me too. I wasn't planning on staying in Chestnut Creek until I drove up and saw the inn. I had to see what it looked like on the inside. I hope we're meeting your expectations, I say. You have no idea. Luke takes a step and raises his hand. The back of his fingers brush my cheek. They feel icy and hot all at once. My eyes flutter shut and I feel his warm breath wash over my face. Then suddenly his touch is gone, and icy air chills my skin. My eyes open when Luke steps back. Out of the corner, I see a car pulling up the drive. Heat rises in my cheeks and I tug my hat further down before stepping onto the stone path. The car doors open and a couple gets out. Do you have a room available?
Chapter 4. Luke. I sit in the dining room sipping another cup of amazing coffee. The couple that interrupted my attempt to kiss Ella is busy eating breakfast at the other end of the spacious dining room. I'm not sure what came over me yesterday. Maybe it was cabin fever. Or the surprisingly strong old-fashioned Margaret had served us before Ella and I stepped out on the porch. Or maybe it's been the stunning vista of Chestnut Creek draped in the first big snow of the season. Can I get you something for breakfast? Margaret asks when she steps into the room to check on her guests. Ella is nowhere to be seen. No, thank you. Coffee is fine. I smile at her, wondering if Ella mentioned anything to her. It had to be strange, considering the woman standing in front of me is the mother of Ella's late husband. Another cup then? Margaret asks, her smile no different from yesterday afternoon. Why not? I scroll through my phone, rereading the email that landed in my inbox yesterday. The offer is everything I've wanted. A chance to not only document a vanishing way of life, but a stunning landscape view very few of us are privileged enough to see with our own eyes. Here you go. I hope you don't mind, but you look like you could use a little something to go with the coffee. Margaret places a plate that holds 2 golden biscuits, a dish of butter, and a jar of what I assume is homemade jam in front of me. The scent of the freshly baked bread hits me and my stomach growls loudly. Thank you. As I watch her leave, I realize that this place is different from the establishments where I usually stay. And it doesn't have anything to do with the beauty of this historic inn or the creature comforts that are a rare luxury in my line of work. I'm getting attached. That's new. I slather butter on the warm biscuit and take a bite. It's fluffy with just a hint of salt. The strawberry jam is a nice addition to the next bite. Before I realize what I'm doing, I finish them both, earning myself a pleased smile from Margaret when she returns to clean the table. Feeling more settled, I set off in search of Ella. I find her behind the reception desk, deep into a phone conversation with a potential new guest from the sound of it. I busy myself by flipping through a brochure from the State Tourism Department. What can I do for you? Ella asks, her hand covering the receiver of the landline phone she's using. I shake my head. Finish your conversation. I'm not in a rush. I wander around the lobby, studying the thin leaflet. The North Carolina Tourism Bureau could use my services from the look of the images. The glossy paper is wasted on the photos that look like they were taken sometime in the 80s. I hear Ella wrap up her call, expecting her to join me in the armchairs by the fireplace. When she doesn't, I walk back to the reception desk. Her fingers are flying over the keyboard. Busy day? I ask. So far, so good. Ella gives me a polite smile that's completely different from the warm ones we've shared these past 2 days. I'll leave you to your work then, I say. The look of relief on the beautiful woman's face cuts me like a sharp knife. Maybe we can have lunch together and chat about more pictures for your social media accounts. Sure, that sounds good. Reluctance shades her voice, but at least she doesn't turn me down. See you then. I head back to my room to get dressed for another trip to town. On my way out, I capture the historic inn from a few fresh angles. Between these shots and the ones I've taken in and around town, Ella should have plenty of pictures to rotate through in her marketing. No matter how hard I try, I can't get her out of my head. Not even when I take a call to discuss the Finland trip at the local coffee shop. I'm pleasantly surprised the place is open. My chilled body appreciates the excellent coffee and a chance to warm up before I head back outside. I pull on my sunglasses, the heavy layers of snow reflecting the sun overhead. The bright light provides new challenges but also new opportunities to capture with my lenses. It's well past noon when I finally make my way back to the inn. The first thing I notice are the cars in the gravel parking lot next to the main building. Up until last night, my rental car had been the only one parked there. Now several new vehicles occupy the space. Ella is busy checking in a new group of guests when I walk in. I wave at her and head up to my room to put away my gear before lunch. The next 24 hours go by in a blur. I'm fielding more calls and dozens of emails about the Finland project, feeling the pressure to either accept or decline the offer for the trip. The fact that I'm hesitating surprises me. Ella is busier than ever, and we rarely get a moment to talk. When we do, she feels distant. Little of the warmth and spark of something special is left, and I'm starting to wonder if I imagined it. Or maybe it's the stress of dealing with an inn packed with people and an influx of interest in the place in general. Not one, but several of the social media posts we worked on together have gone viral, and the results are unfolding in front of my eyes. I'm torn between feeling pride in my work and regretting the wedge it has driven between me and Ella. If that's what's causing the vibe of retreat I'm getting from her. Mind if I join you for lunch? I look up, surprised. It's past 2 in the afternoon, well past the usual time meals are served in the dining room, but Margaret took pity on me. She is busy fixing me coffee and a couple of sandwiches. Ella is the last person I expect to step into the otherwise abandoned dining room. Please do, I say, pointing to the chair opposite mine and fighting hard not to get my hopes up. I wanted to thank you for everything you've done. Thanks to your beautiful pictures, we're booked solid through the middle of January. Ella sits down. It was my pleasure. I'll have more images for you once I get a chance to edit the last batch. I smile at her. This is the first time we speak since our moment on the front porch when I almost kissed her. I would like to apologize for the other night, I say. I got caught up in the moment and overstepped. We both did. She sighs softly. It's barely audible despite the stillness in the empty room. Ella looks more vulnerable than I've seen her since that night. Vulnerable and hopefully open to hearing what I have to say. I don't regret it. I lean back and look deep into her eyes, hoping she can see my sincerity. I don't either, she says before shaking her head. Not that it matters. My hope rises and gets crushed in the same breath. What makes you say that? I ask, hoping I'll learn something about what's going on in that pretty head of hers. Because my life is here and you are about to head off on another fun adventure. We're traveling through life on different roads. She sits back and smiles. Finland. I looked at some pictures online. It looks amazing. I'm fighting not to let the last part distract me. It doesn't have to be that way. Of course it does. You can't let that slip you by. It sounds like an amazing opportunity. It is. The more I learn about the project, the more I'm itching to fly out there. Come with me. Ella's eyes grow as wide as saucers. I couldn't. Why not? I ask, surprised how serious I am. We've only known each other for a few days, but I wouldn't mind getting to know this woman better. And what better way than to travel to a foreign country together? It has a way of crystallizing very quickly whether you're going to work out as a couple. Or not. My life is here. She shrugs and looks out the window. I hope she's imagining what it would be like to head to Finland with me. It would only be for a month or two, I say. You could even leave early if need be. Ella is quiet for long enough to give me a flicker of hope. I can't. I couldn't leave Margaret here to manage on her own. It wouldn't be fair. More goes unsaid as we sit there in the empty dining room, both of us lost in thoughts of what could be. Finland is a big opportunity for you, isn't it? Ella asks. Professionally. Yes. Then you should take it. Go take the most amazing pictures and share them with the world. She gets to her feet and leaves the room before I can think of what to say. I sit, holding on to my coffee cup. It surprises me how insistent she is for me to leave. Part of me is grateful for her support. The other part of me is sad that she's withdrawn from what could have been between us. By the time I leave the dining room, I've decided to accept the assignment. I email my contact and ask them to get me out there as quickly as possible. I may not be ready to say goodbye to Ella and the Cedarwood Inn, but staying and seeing her every time I round a corner is too hard to bear.
Chapter 5. Ella. This is the last of the images. Luke hands me a memory card, our fingers touching for a single heartbeat in the exchange. Thank you. Any fun plans for the rest of the day? I ask. He shakes his head. I'm packing. My plane leaves tonight. I do my best to keep my expression neutral and friendly, but the news blindsides me. So soon. Luke shrugs. No point in sticking around. Might as well start making my way to Europe. I'll spend a few days in London and Oslo while we finalize travel arrangements for my time in Finland. That sounds like fun. I hear Europe is beautiful this time of the year. I swallow the bitter taste of disappointment that surprises me. With all the lights, the decorations, and the Christmas markets. Looks like this place is going to be stunning as well. Luke points to the set of Christmas trees that grace each side of the stone fireplace. We had them delivered this morning, along with several garlands that make the whole place smell like the holidays. I hope so. I'm trying something new this year. The traditional red and gold decorations are tucked away in their boxes. I hope our long-standing guests won't be disappointed by the change. I'm sure it will be amazing. Send me some pictures when you get a chance. Luke's shoulders drop and he stands there for a moment. I should finish packing. I leave for the airport in an hour. I don't know what to say. What comes out of my mouth is, let me know if there's anything we can do. He nods and walks away. I swallow hard, the reality of what's about to happen hitting me like a ton of bricks. My heart sinks with each step he takes to walk back up to his room for the last time. I return my attention to the box of ornaments I've spent the past year sourcing. Everything is made from natural materials and is fully biodegradable once it no longer serves its purpose. Ella, can I talk to you for a minute in the kitchen? Margaret calls from the dining room. I look around the lobby. A few people are hanging out by the fireplace, but everyone seems settled and doesn't require my immediate attention. Is there a problem? I look around the kitchen, wondering if there is an issue with today's meals. The roads are pretty clear, the store's open, and our commercial refrigerator should be fully stocked with anything to keep our guests happy. Margaret shakes her head. Everything is fine here. It's you I'm worried about. Why? There is nothing but compassion in the eyes of the woman who declared me her daughter on my wedding day. Sit down. I have tea brewing. I look behind me, wondering if one of our guests has a question. They can manage without you for a few minutes. Margaret puts a fragrant cup of tea and a small plate of ginger cookies in front of me. They are still warm from the oven. Thank you. The sweet gesture brings tears to my eyes and I sit down. I've been watching you. You look like you are carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, my mother-in-law says. It's nothing. I take a sip of tea and force myself to taste a cookie. It's as delicious as I expected it to be, but today the sweet treat doesn't bring me the joy it usually does. Probably because my stomach is in a tight knot. It's something, and my guess is that it has something to do with Luke. Margaret eyes me over her raised cup. It doesn't matter. It matters to your heart. I can see that as clear as day. Margaret sips her tea. Tell me about you and him. There isn't much to tell. We had a moment, but I could never. Oh, honey. Please tell me this isn't about Michael. She reaches across the table and squeezes my hand. You know he would want nothing more than to see you happy. Maybe. I'm not convinced. Somehow, almost kissing another man had felt like a betrayal of the vows I made. Ella, don't let a second chance at love pass you by out of some feeling of obligation to my son, Margaret says and watches me carefully. Or me. I look up. I can't leave you here at the inn by yourself. If that's what it takes to see you happy again? Margaret shrugs. We'll figure something out. I'm sure we could hire a manager if it came to that. It's all too much, I say. Too complicated. I don't even want to contemplate the logistics of hiring someone to replace me here. I'm struggling enough with the feelings I'm developing for the man upstairs who's packing his bags. And the fear of losing another chance at love. It's not. I promise. Margaret smiles at me encouragingly. You love him, don't you? I shake my head. I know true love. It's too early for that. Falling in love a little, maybe. I'll get over it. I don't want you to get over it, Margaret says. I want you to take a chance, act on your feelings, and not let past grief and heartbreak dictate your future happiness. It's too late. He's leaving right now. Out of the window to my left, I can see a small stretch of the road that leads from the inn to town. Luke's rental car is slowly making its way down it and out of my sight. Ella Jameson, it's never too late, and you know it. Margaret waits for me to give her my full attention. It's okay to embrace new love, honey. It doesn't mean you love Michael any less or that you're not honoring his memory. Your heart has no limit. It'll grow to let you love them both. I let her words soak in while examining the pain in my chest that flared up the moment I saw him drive off. Margaret sits behind the reception desk, circling something on a map of Chestnut Creek when I return to the lobby a little while later. You're right, I say when she looks up. Margaret smiles. I usually am. The question is, what are you going to do now? I'm going to stop Luke from leaving. I rummage through the desk and find my purse and car keys. Isn't it a little late for that? Margaret's eyes shine with joy and approval. I laugh, feelings bubbling out of me. It attracts the attention of the guests gathered in the lobby. It is, but I'm hoping I can catch him at the airport in Asheville. Are you going to be okay, by yourself for a couple of hours? Of course. Go. She all but shoves me toward the front door. Wish me luck, I call over my shoulder as I rush across the lobby. Good luck, Margaret calls. The door opens before I get to it and cold air rushes in along with Luke Harrison. He pulls his woolen cap off and steps closer. My heart is racing a million miles a minute. You were heading out, he asks, stepping aside and holding the door open for me. I nod. I was going to Asheville. To the airport. Why, he asks, his expression guarded. To do this. I push the door shut and throw my arms around his neck. His eyes grow wide, but he doesn't step back. I take it as a good sign and pick up where we stopped the other night. My lips finally touch his. They are chilled from the cold air outside and there's a faint taste of mint. It takes Luke about half a second to catch up. His hand wraps in my hair and he pulls me closer, deepening our kiss. I lose all sense of time and place, wrapped in his arms. It feels like home. It isn't until we both come up for air that the clapping and cheering around us registers in my mind. The heat rises in my cheeks. Luke grins. You were going to come after me? I nod, resisting the urge to put my forehead on his shoulder and hide my face in the crook of his neck. It's a good thing I came back then, he says. Why? Because I wasn't headed to Asheville. Plans changed, and I was supposed to fly out of Greenville instead. I laugh at the thought of running around the wrong airport, looking for a man who wasn't there. I guess you're right. Why did you come back? He raises his hand and pushes a strand of my hair behind my ear. His touch is gentle, almost reverent. The further I got out of town, the stranger I felt. Something wasn't right. It took me longer than it should have, but I finally realized I couldn't leave without telling you exactly how I feel about you, Ella. And what's that? I ask, my heart skipping a beat or two. Luke looks up and I remember that we're still standing in the lobby of my hotel, surrounded by curious guests and my mother-in-law. Do you think we could have this conversation somewhere a little more private? Of course. I turn and look around, thinking of somewhere to go. Would you like to take a walk into town with me? Luke asks. Yes. Moving and talking sounds like a good idea. I need a way to get this nervous energy out, and a stroll into Chestnut Creek in the winter chill should do the trick. Have fun, you two, Margaret calls across the room. We walk the streets of the small town that has been my home for as long as I can remember. Michael and I grew up here together and were high school sweethearts. It is strange and somehow exhilarating to stroll the same paths with Luke. This is strange for you, isn't it? Luke asks, picking up on the mood. It is. I take his hand in mine as we continue to make our way through town. I never thought there would be anyone other than Michael. And I never thought I'd consider establishing a home base. Luke matches his pace. Traveling the world is important to you. I never had much of a desire to leave this part of North Carolina and haven't ventured further than the Gulf Coast beaches of Florida. Funny how those things change from one moment to the next. It is. And this town and the inn are important to you. We both grow quiet, each of us struggling to see a way to make this relationship viable. It's not going to be easy, but if you're up for it, I'd like to see if we can make this work, Luke says when we reach the center of town. What did you have in mind? I ask, enjoying the feel of his warm fingers wrapped around my hand. I didn't realize how much I missed any form of intimate physical touch. My body and soul crave that special connection, even if it's something as innocent as holding hands. That depends. Luke turns and looks at me. His features are soft and the dimple is back. How do you feel about traveling with me during the off-season? If someone had asked me this a couple of weeks ago, I would have laughed in their face. Especially the kind of travel Luke has in mind. I don't even have a passport, I blurt out. We can get you one of those. He lets go of my hand and puts his arm around my shoulders, pulling me close. Does that mean you're open to the idea of traveling the world with me part of the year? I'm open, I say, wrapping my arm around his waist and matching my step to his. I could spend a good chunk of my time here. This place is something special and there are plenty of beautiful spots to explore in the vicinity. He looks up at the mountains that surround us. There are. And I can't wait to share all of my favorites with him while we explore this temporary long-distance relationship thing. The sun is low in the sky by the time we return to the inn. Margaret has hot cocoa waiting for us and the three of us enjoy a quiet moment by the fire. Does this mean you're staying for a while, Luke? Margaret asks. It's the question I've been reluctant to bring up and I hold my breath, waiting for Luke's reply. I am, he says, looking at me. If you have room. I don't think I'm ready for Finland. There are more important things to explore here in Chestnut Creek. If that's okay with you. I would like that, I say, with a huge smile. And I'm sure we can find you a place to stay. I happen to know this cute inn nestled into the mountain. Epilogue. Ella. 10 months later. Ready? I ask, looking at Luke. As ready as I'll ever be. He's vibrating with anticipation. As am I. Today is a big deal. The first day of a special exhibit of the photographs he has taken in and around Chestnut Creek since he arrived in our town. They span the course of 4 seasons, the latest pictures taken just a few weeks ago when the autumn leaves were at their peak in our neck of the woods. The past few months had been a whirlwind, culminating in a record fall season for the Cedarwood Inn. We'd stayed booked at capacity for months since the summer. Thankfully, things had slowed down in preparation for Luke's exhibit. I stroll across the inn's lobby and open the door to let in the small crowd that has gathered on the front porch over the past half an hour. Welcome. I step aside and stay in the background, watching my friends and neighbors, along with a surprising amount of people I don't recognize, walk in and engage with the art and the artist. I think we can call this a success. Margaret walks up beside me. I smile, watching the group gathered around Luke follow him from one large print to the next, hanging on his every word about subject matter and composition. Some of them ask questions about his equipment, while others philosophize about angles and light. Margaret is right. The exhibit is a tremendous success, and this is only day one. Do you have a favorite? A journalist who came in from Greenville asks me. I nod and walk over to the shot of the steppes of Mongolia with the sacred Sambagarav mountain in the background. Luke took it earlier this summer on a 3-week expedition trip for a travel company. What is it about this image? The journalist asks. I smile, thinking about the brief phone call Luke and I had while he was there. The crazy man had called me from his satellite phone to describe the landscape immortalized in the image. It was the moment I'd known we'd make it, no matter where his work took him. And it solidified my desire to take any chance I got to accompany him on his adventures across the world. The stark contrast between the green grass of the steppe and the snow-capped mountain. Or maybe the vastness of the landscape. It makes me feel small and significant at the same time, I say instead. He scribbles down a few notes and moves on to other visitors to record their impressions of Luke Harrison's exhibit. Margaret and I slowly circle the room, watching people react to the photographs that include stunning landscapes and intimate portraits. The subjects run the gambit from his nomadic travels to familiar images of Chestnut Creek and the surrounding area. We stop in front of a beautiful photograph of the Cedarwood Inn, covered in snow, under the bright light of a winter sky. It was the best of the images he'd taken during his first stay with us. On the day when I got the first hint that love after losing my husband was possible. Much has happened since then and I wouldn't trade the past 10 months for anything. Joy bubbles up inside me as I watch Luke taking pride in his art and sharing the stories behind the photographs. He spends hours engaging with the exhibit guests and answering questions. The light is low in the sky and the lamps in the inn are lit when the crowd finally thins. Luke sits down beside me and sighs. Long day? I ask. Good day. He grins like a fool. The smile morphs into a yawn. I'm glad. And from what I've seen, your audience had a good time too. My audience? His dimple is a permanent fixture today. You had them hanging on your words the entire time. Is that jealousy I detect? Luke asks. That makes me laugh. Hardly. I get your full attention any other time. And I see your photographs before anyone else does. It's true. It doesn't matter if it's contract work or an art piece like those surrounding us, I'm the first person he shares them with and I wouldn't want it any other way. That you do. Luke gets to his feet and holds out his hand. But I haven't had a chance to view the exhibition with you yet. Walk with me. Now. I ask. It's late, almost time for dinner. Now. He's insistent, and I let him pull me up. Would you like to join us? He asks Margaret. My mother-in-law shakes her head. You two go ahead. I'm comfortable right here. Are you sure? I ask. She nods. I'm going to enjoy a few minutes of quiet solitude and then I'll get started on dinner. I hesitate. I should help you with that. It has been a long day for all of us. Margaret waves me off. Go have fun. It won't take me long to put something together. I'll join you in a bit, I promise before walking the floor with Luke. It's nice to see the now familiar photographs with him beside me. I saw you walk over to this one with the reporter, Luke says when we come to the Mongolia shot. He asked me what my favorite was. I shrug. Luke knows how I feel about this image and its special meaning. Did you tell him that the mountain depicted is sacred to the people who live in its shadow? He asks. I shake my head. We didn't get that far. All he wanted was a couple of quotes, I think. Luke nods, and we make our way to a series of images depicting Chestnut Creek. This is where it all started, he says, taking my hand. The photo in front of us depicts a waterfall, part of the liquid frozen into beautiful icicle shapes. He took it the day we met, before the big snow that kept him long enough in our little town to fall in love with it. And with me. I smile and lean into him, grateful that the natural beauty of the falls had given him enough pause to interrupt his travels. I never thought I'd find everything I was looking for right here, in a small town nestled into the North Carolina mountains. Luke's words are soft, barely a breath. I like the sound of that. More than he knows. We've come a long way since that day, Luke says. Haven't we? I nod, feeling a knot in my throat. 2 years ago, I thought the icy darkness of grief that had wrapped its cold fingers around me would never end. A year ago, I was finally able to breathe and settled into a comfortable life with Margaret. Then Luke stepped into it one cold winter day and everything changed. I swallow hard. Are you still happy with the way things are? Luke asks. I turn around, surprised by the questioning doubt I detect on his ruggedly handsome face. Of course I am. I know we don't always get to spend as much time together as we'd like. He travels extensively, and it isn't always feasible for me to join him, at least not for the entirety of his trips. But when we do, we make the most of every moment. There is something to be said about that. Besides, what's that saying? Absence makes the heart grow fonder? That's the one. I smile, thinking about my joy when he'd returned from Mongolia. I've been thinking about the coming year. I think I want to spend more time state-bound. It isn't the first time he's mentioned this. That would be nice. Actually, I've been thinking about spending most of it here, with you. I would love that, but what would you be doing? There are only so many pictures he can take in and around town. And I'm sure he's taken them all in the time he's spent here. With me. I'm thinking of teaching some workshops here in town. I found a space that will work as a studio, Luke says. It could be good business for the inn too. Have people come in from out of state? I'm trying to wrap my head around what he's saying. Not just from the US. I've had inquiries from photographers around the world who are interested in getting a foot in the door with this type of photography. There's a sense of pride in his voice that surprises me. Out of the corner of my eye, I see Margaret disappearing into the kitchen. You think that could work? I ask, trying hard not to get my hopes up. It would solve my last remaining reservations about how we can make this relationship work in the long run. We won't know until we find out, Luke says. I should go help Margaret. She returns a moment later with a fresh tray of glasses and a bottle of champagne, which surprises me. Most of the exhibition's visitors are gone. Only a few guests remain. Ella? Luke's voice shakes. I step back and turn around. A gasp escapes my lips when Luke gets down on one knee. What are you doing? Every eye in the room is on us. Ella Jameson, you have made the past 10 months some of the happiest of my life. I can't imagine living the rest of it without you by my side. I know this is a big ask, but would you consider walking beside me, joining me on my travels when you can, and spending the rest of it, right here in Chestnut Creek as my wife? I'm speechless. I look around, seeing the warm smile on Margaret's face. She nods at me encouragingly and I return my gaze to Luke, who's still on one knee in front of me. He reaches into his pants pocket and pulls out a ring. Will you marry me? He asks, his eyes never leaving mine. Yes, I say, softly at first, then again, more firmly. Yes, Luke. I'll marry you. I reach down and pull him up before letting him slip the ring on my finger. A thin band of rose gold holds a round center diamond, flanked by smaller round stones on each side. All but one appear to be diamonds. It's a tiny light-colored emerald, Luke says. To represent the month we first met. Everything is ethically sourced, of course. It's stunning. I move my hand, catching the light in the array of stones. The ring is nestled against the band from my first marriage. I've never taken it off. There's another small band that goes with it, Luke says. A wedding band. Something thin enough to stack on top of the rings that now grace my finger. My heart warms at how much thought Luke has put into this and how natural it feels to wear the rings the two most important men in my life have given me. I turn my head and look at Margaret. Her hand is over her heart and there's nothing but joy on her face. She walks over with the champagne and puts it down before embracing me. I'm so happy for you, Margaret says. For both of you. Luke pops the bottle and we toast to our future. One filled with adventure and love. The light of the rising full moon streaming in through the window catches in the tiny facets of the stones in my ring. They sparkle like promises about the years of happiness to come. The end. This has been Snowed In. Written by Susanne Ash. Copyright 2024 by Susanne Ash. Production copyright 2024 by Susanne Ash. Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe if you want me to put more of my books on YouTube. Visit my website at www.susanneash.com for more of my books or find me on Amazon.